These threats not only put at stake the security of information, but they also interrupt critical services, supply chains, and also they are eroding people's trust on the digital systems. And our region is not immune to this. And in the last few years, it has become one of the regions with the largest incidence of attacks. The objective of today's seminar is to go deeper into the analysis of the challenges in security matters. And for this, it is necessary to understand what these vulnerabilities are, but also to share the knowledge that will allow us to design strategies in order to mitigate the challenges that we're facing. So in this context, ECLAC, from its digital observatory, it's contributing with studies like the one that will be presented in the first session, which makes a reference to the cyber attacks to logistic chain and critical infrastructure in Latin America and the Caribbean, and supports the countries in policies and legal frameworks. And one of the strategies is the one that we've worked with the Telecommunications and Transportation Commission, which is the 2035 initiative that was put together on behalf of this commission, which has the endorsement of the Subtel and the support of the academia and civil society. Having national strategies is critical, but we also require the cooperation at the regional level by sharing best practices, developing skills, and putting together solid and robust frameworks. We believe that the exchange of knowledge that will take place in this event will be extremely useful in order to guide policies and standards, and it'll also be an input for the presentation that will take place on the 9th conference, which will take place here in Chile next year, where the Subtel will be chairing the event. ECLAC, as the technical secretariat of LILAC, and with the support of Digital Alliance, will continue providing support to the region in order to move forward in these enabling environments in transformation, data governance, cybersecurity, in order to put together a digital pathway for an inclusive and sustainable development of the region. In closing, I would like to thank all of the presenters that have kindly accepted to share their experiences here today, because their contributions will allow us to have a better understanding of the challenges that we face and the solutions that we can take together, as jointly we can build a digitally safe and resilient future. So I wish you a very good seminar today. We will now have the presence of Senator Kenneth Pugh, who will address the audience. Senator, please.
Gracias, Fernando. Muy buenos días a todos.
Thank you, Fernando. Good morning, everybody. I want to thank all of us who are also following on the networks and that are making this seminar come true. And I want to thank ECLAC, not only for having contributed to develop the Digital Chile 2035 strategy. This cannot be done alone. In cybersecurity, we should not compete. We should all collaborate. And I'm talking about public, private world, the enforcement agencies, civil society, in order to have regulatory frameworks that are updated, updatable, but also that they are possible to implement and control in order to make sure that we can measure their impacts. This is a digital world, there's no doubt, but the thing is that we, as a society, already are part of this cyber society, and there's no separation between the physical and the digital world. The way that we engage in the physical world, starting with the social pact, must have these digital attachment to it. Not only must we have the trust of the physical trust of people, but also digital trust by protecting people, protecting their rights in the digital space, starting with their personal data. But everything else that we're doing today are digital relationships. So by using social media, the information, the bank transactions, and all the companies that are also innovating are all joining this digital world. There's no space where this does not have a presence, and that's why we want to make sure that access to digital world, digital technologies, and cyberspace is guaranteed. And that's what these new rights of the 21st century are about, not only in the physical world, but also the digital world. Equal access, equal opportunities. And this is politics. This is not something technical. We're not talking here about firewalls. We're not talking about subject matter experts. We're talking about leadership and the need for the political actors to get involved in order to take their countries forward. And as a region, we must do this all together. And ECLAC is a space where we can precisely provide documentation, information, collaborative work. But it is critical to understand that we depend on this digital world. Economies are digital. And if we want to thrive, we must take advantage of that and we must prosecute the criminals. Cyberspace should not be the place where we have more artificial intelligence than humans, because that uncontrolled artificial intelligence can do things that we don't even know about. Freedom of speech is the right of humans, not a right for machines or artificial intelligence, and therefore it needs to be regulated. Interoperability provides legal certainty to the digital activities, but for humans. And together with the digital identity, it allows for humans to work amongst them on a daily basis. Those are the challenges, and these are the elements that need to be considered so that each of the countries can take advantage of this wonderful opportunity. And Chile wants to become a benchmark, and from the Senate, we also would like to be an instance for ongoing dialogue, because the secret precisely lies in this integration between the public and private sector, an alliance, a partnership that starts from the development of the projects and thus leaving an institution, an institutionality. So I want to thank you all, and I want to congratulate you for all of the seminars that you've been holding on these matters, and also as a country, the effort that we've put together in order to establish this 12-year strategy. Thank you, Fernando. No, thank you, dear Senator. I want to take advantage to thank the Undersecretary for his presence, and I know that he's made important efforts to be with us today. And I want to give him the floor so that he can address the audience. Undersecretary, the floor is yours. Thank you, Fernando. Let me start by apologizing for having arrived late. I should have been here earlier on, but I did have a prior commitment, and all of these weather situation means that I have to be at different places at the same time. So I do have to speak about this digital world, and I always start by saying that the economy and society is moving towards a virtual world. And one of the things that we are concerned about and that we try to address is digital inclusion. When we talk about digital inclusion, there's always a concern that comes up, which has to do with what happens to people in the digital world. I mean, first we need to develop skills, but those skills must not exclude the data security, because oftentimes we're not even aware of what it is that we post on the networks and how we express ourselves in the social media and the risks that we run. Because just as the formal and informal economies go into the digital world, also cybercrime. Now, the same crimes are being committed, but in the digital world. Phishing, and which is done with emails, through emails sent over smartphones. So it's the same kind of crimes that we have in real life, in the physical world, are also migrating towards this digital society, this digital world. And therefore, we have an urgency to understand this. We need to take actions from the state, from the industry, or different industries involved. And I also believe that we do have a very big urgency in trying to develop cyber skills that include cybersecurity as a key element. Otherwise, what could happen is a migration of people from the digital world, which would leave them at a disadvantage that we should not put up with. So from this point of view, when ICLAC proposed, when Chile Telco also proposed to hold a seminar on this subject, we embraced that because we understood that we do need to develop this knowledge that is later translated into very concrete actions. With Senator Pugh, we often talk about how to address these topics. And truth be told, I believe that what we need to have is a roadmap with the work that the senator has led together with that technical group. We have a very important first action, including all the actors that are involved. So I really want to thank ICLAC for allowing us to have this space, for allowing us to get together to talk about these topics in order to understand how to address this from the society point of view. Thank you, Undersecretary. Now we will go straight into the first panel, which has been called a global and regional cybersecurity perspective or outlook. This will be chaired by Georgina Núñez from the Productive and Entrepreneurial Agency, and she's also the co-author in cybersecurity and survey data. So, Georgina, please, the floor is yours. Good morning. Good morning, all of the members here present, and also the people that are following us through YouTube. And I want to welcome you all once again, and I want to thank the Senate and the government of Chile for being with us and for co-organizing this event. And I want, just as an introduction, show a brief video as an introduction for this panel, which gives us the main ideas, the main elements and the main tools that we have worked with in our main publications. Please, Alejandro.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So let's go straight to the first presenter, Rodrigo Diaz, who is a systems analyst and is a professional that's certified in IT systems, in the Certified Information System Security Professional with more than 20 years of experience in information security in the ports sector. And he's also certified in storage, security of Windows servers and networks, Cisco, also operational continuity of a critical infrastructure, e-security, radar system, artificial intelligence and analytics. He's also being an expert for ECLAC and a trainer for e-commerce and technology for Latin America and the Caribbean since 2019. Also for organizations like Vista from Asia, and also for logistic platforms and for the OAS. So, Rodrigo, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias, Georgina, por la presentación. Quiero agradecer especialmente a la CEPAL, al Senado de la República de Chile, a Global Gateway por auspiciar este evento. Y bueno, qué importante juntarnos para conversar de un tema tan vigente. Retomando, si me permiten, las palabras del subsecretario y del senador, quisiera traer a la mesa el término alemán Umwelt, que denomina el espacio que el ser humano, la porción del universo que el ser humano tiene dominio. Y qué tan oportuno pensar si ese universo se extendió al ciberespacio, si hoy tenemos las herramientas y contamos con la información necesaria para poder analizar los riesgos y si logramos ampliar nuestro Umwelt, porque lo que está fuera de él directamente nos resulta invisibles, no existe. Entonces, importante resaltar el reconocimiento de los nuevos riesgos en la nueva normalidad para poder desde las personas abordarlo conscientemente en la realidad actual. Esto da, desde mi punto de vista, las 5 verticales que dan importancia a la ciberseguridad y da escenario para que CEPAL pueda hacer un gran esfuerzo desde algunos años y en el cual me han honrado en ser partícipe. Y por sobre todas las cosas, salvaguardar la seguridad nacional a través de la prevención de ataques a los sistemas de datos de inteligencia y militares. Continuando la seguridad de las personas, como ya lo mencionó el senador Pugh, asegurando la confidencialidad de los datos personales y el cumplimiento normativo y regulatorio vigente. En tercer lugar, los riesgos del ciberespacio hoy ocupan la mesa chica y están en la discusión de riesgo corporativo, y así debe ser. En cuarta instancia, proteger la infraestructura crítica en un entorno creciente de dependencia de la tecnología digital y de la conectividad en línea. Podemos citar solo como un ejemplo el ataque a Colonial Pipeline en 2022, que puso en jaque toda la sociedad de los estados del este de Estados Unidos. Y por último, pero no menos importante, preservar a las organizaciones de ataques cibernéticos que pueden provocar pérdidas económicas por disrupciones operativas y por pérdida en la propiedad intelectual y cómo se puede erosionar la confianza de los clientes y los inversores para la región. Llevando a números y a indicadores, cuando CEPAL empezó a trabajar formalmente en herramientas para acompañar los desafíos de la ciberseguridad, el cibercrimen generaba una pérdida de 2 billones de dólares anuales a nivel global y en el año 2022 alcanzó la cifra de 7 billones de dólares en manos del cibercrimen, una industria sumamente lucrativa y en crecimiento. Y se proyecta un valor de 10.5 billones de dólares para el año 2025. Asimismo, las publicaciones del Foro Económico Mundial, que se hacen anualmente, coloca a los ciberdelitos en segundo lugar. Solamente pasaron a tercer lugar luego de la pandemia, cuando se tomó dimensión de lo que puede ser nuevos riesgos por infecciones, pero solamente detrás de las catástrofes naturales. Entonces, por eso, esto que comentábamos de la importancia de poner los ciberriesgos en la mesa chica y el análisis del riesgo corporativo. Para dar una dimensión, simplemente hacer un listado de las herramientas que se mostraban en el video y que Georgina comentó que CEPAL viene trabajando y poniendo a disposición en la región con una activa participación en la concientización de la sociedad cuando se decretó cuando tuvimos la necesidad de ir al aislamiento por la
see the crisis of COVID-19. From there, the publications that started to show the increasing scale of this and where we need to work. And I will focus in the last three ones, and I will give more space to this particular one. First of all, we have what was developed in 2020 as the first diagnosis, since we didn't have enough data at that time for what was happening in the region. Through technical tools, we're able to collect information, that is to say, a sampling of 10 countries in the region. And from there, we had a chance to determine that in Latin America in 2020, 7 of 10 organizations had these attacks on an annual basis. And in this context, where the cybersecurity didn't have enough security for the development of the technological aspects in the countries, and inefficient operational capacity for the operational centers, and for the responses with the CCRTs. And a very important initiative was deployed, but at this time was under silos in an isolated manner. And this is the reality in Latin America, with the participation that is very important for the small and medium-sized companies that are exposed at the same time as the major companies vis-a-vis these cybersecurity attacks, but do not have the human resources and the economical resources to tackle this problem. And the findings produced by the first document determined that the main strategies were focused on these transboundary initiatives from the institutions with the regional scope as ECLAC. We should encourage the countries to develop their strategies according to the guidelines by the International Union of Telecommunications 2018, and advancing to this community of cyber immunity, and reinforcing at the same time the legal and regulatory scheme in order to reduce this level of regional investment. The second document now that we have been working on in 2021 as a tool is a technical approach. And I do not intend to lead this to a problem merely of firewalls, or some words that are very difficult to understand for the people who are not involved in this on a daily basis, but we should put it concretely in human terms in order to avoid the real technical issue that is taking place behind the simple actions that are taking place every day. And from this technical approach, some tools were alluded to in order to create this culture of cyber immunity. And in this context of growing attacks, we determine already the mutation of the different extortions due to, or that amounted to very high figures, not only targeted to the operational continuity as it was in 2017, but that are now targeted to the value of the data, and also the regulatory compliance. At this situation today is a common course, and we were able to announce this in 2021. We determined also the weaknesses and strengths of this industry 4.0. And there was a very important topic related to artificial intelligence. The document also showed the global operational structure available for the response to these attacks from the different artificial intelligence organizations. In this document also, we pointed out the main strategies, for example, continuing with the efforts of the International Organization for coordinating the actions and aligning the policies together with the Organization of the United Nations and the American states, and the European Union in order to tackle this issue and also for the governance of data as the heritage and immaterial assets and continue with this effort of digital transformation on a steady manner and also continuing from the starting stages and also in the cases where possible to choose the intrinsically secure technologies. Finally, we have this work that has been done by ECLAC and that materialized in the document that was published yesterday with the participation of Georgina. And the objective of this document was to highlight the intersection between cybersecurity governance and the corporate risk in Latin America and the Caribbean, at the same time also proposing the initiatives to reinforce the cybersecurity in the next coming years. In this document, the main objectives were around this strategy, and the key results that we found out is although in the region we were able to set this idea of a higher risk and the negligence of these issues can also erode the trust of organizations, and there are some headways obtained, and these are however initiatives from some countries that are well advanced, but in general terms in the region it is not necessary or there is no agreement in order to move forward in these matters and not losing competitiveness around the world. And we need more integration for the centers of attention or response to the incidents. And this also creates a lot of expectations in order to have the data from this. And in the study, we already have some information provided by these centers and from what they collect on a continuous manner. And we think that it's very important to promote these institutions in order to get more information and to tear down these barriers in the cyberspace. Now, the studies have shown already that out of seven organizations, as was the case in 2020, in 2022 we had 9 out of 10 those organizations that receive attacks on an annual basis. And now the strategies that are pointed out by this document are from the situations with a regional scope, which should continue the support so that the countries can develop and implement the regulatory and legal frameworks in order to reinforce the cybersecurity, which should also reinforce these CSIRTs as public institution in the case of attacks. We should act together with the intelligence forces and to help the SMEs that do not have the resources that are required when they are victims of cyber attacks. We should also develop preventive strategies based on the new international models. And finally, we should also reinforce the leading role of people as a key factor in this culture of immunity. We should continue to train people. This is continuously needed, and we should continue to build together. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rodrigo, for this overview. And I have Ricardo Sanchez with us. We were working with him in the different documents, by the way. I would like to start, and we have 3 additional panelists. They are very interesting from different walks of life, and we would like to hear their opinions. And I should start out by pointing out the actions they recommend to improve the behavior of consumers or the people in general regarding the cybersecurity and how they can contribute to the cyber immunity. So we'll start with Jean-Marie. And presently, ECLAC, together with the European Union, are working in this digital partnership in order to do all the policies, the regulations in this dialogue between Latin America and the Caribbean and Europe. And we have this working the cybersecurity pillar. And Jean-Marie is a doctor in political science in the University of Lausanne in Switzerland. He also has another degree, and he has worked with Expertise France, which is the public agency for the implementation of these international corporations. He has been professor also of the University of Los Andes in Colombia and Switzerland and Denmark, and he has published also about the PUBs cybersecurity and the construction of peace in different journals and scientific publication. Thank you, Georgina. And thank you, ICLAC, for the invitation to participate. And from this teamwork initiative, it's very important to build the knowledge together with ICLAC in the framework of this political discussion between the two regions. And this report is doing this, that is to say, enlarging the perspective that we have of cybersecurity. And in order to respond to your question and how improving the practices, it is very important. And I think that this study and this report is in this direction. As Senator Cook said, this is a technical and political issue, and therefore we cannot just stay at the creation of the response teams for the computer attacks. We cannot just stay at that level of the technical investment, but we should engage in a political dialogue and to have the political awareness. And we can see that there is a very important approach, not only from the point of view of regulations. And Rodrigo said that we have already accepted the idea of an increasing risk in the region amongst the governments and also the policymakers. However, we can see that the practices are not corresponding to those regulations or to these improved practices that are used for these kind of reports. And there is more space for improvement in the practices. And as it was mentioned in the report, the approach and the SMEs is very important because we're not just referring to major companies that do have the capabilities and resources to protect themselves from cyber attacks, who have the talent and the people to face these problems. Okay.
But also companies that through digital development and through digital transformation are able to reach new markets and to develop new activities, and they end up being quite vulnerable when it comes to selling products, maybe from an Instagram account or maybe efforts in digitizing that end up being quite basic technologically speaking, yet extremely important for the production sector in the region, because there's a lot in this productive sector that is focused precisely on these micro and SMEs. And then also we have people and users, not only on the side of the companies, but also on the side of the consumers, people who want to express their rights to, freedom of speech, but also to undertake different online activities. And here, awareness in terms of cybersecurity is highly limited. And I believe that it's important to take a look at the challenge that has not yet been solved with this type of reports. When we talk about cybersecurity, we are losing an important audience, which is probably the most vulnerable audience, because there's a definition, there's a general concept that cybersecurity seems to be something that is technical, and we need to reiterate and re-insist when starting the discussion that we are not talking about something that is technical. We're not talking about a domain which is exclusively for experts in these matters, but rather practices that can be relatively simple and that allow for improving cybersecurity in cyberspace. The report has recommendations, things like passwords. How strong are passwords in order to protect against cyber attacks. And then the type of passwords that can use can improve the security and access to email access. And that's a very basic, but it's important for users, for micro, small, mid-sized enterprises that become, that will end up being part of the future of cyber policies. It's not just governments, it's not just large companies or governments, but it's really having a comprehensive approach to cybersecurity. And in fact, I would even dare say that we can talk about digital security that sometimes sounds less technical and also more approachable to the daily activities taken by ordinary people. Thank you, Jean-Marie. Two very interesting points. In the center of the strategy, people are very important. And managing a language that is understandable by them, because we know that the collaboration between the different stakeholders is key. And in this document, there are ways and there are suggestions on how to put together passwords, for example. We also have connected online Carolina Rossini. I just would like to remind you that we have simultaneous interpretation in English and Spanish, so you can select the language that best suits you. But I wanted to say that in 2020, at ECLAT, together with the Internet and Jurisdiction, we put together the first report on the situation of regional policies. That was a comprehensive exercise in order to map the different tendencies on the cross-border challenges of Internet and the way that it impacts the different stakeholders, governments, companies, and civil society. Fernando Rojas was in charge of developing that report, and Carolina was a part of that team, and she is leading the DataSphere initiative, and she is a lawyer from University of Sao Paulo and has a master's on intellectual property from the Boston University, over 25 years of experience on technology policies and telecommunications. She's the co-founder of the DataSphere initiative. She's also a member of the Council Global Network for the Economic World Forum, and she's also a teacher in the School of Law and in the University of Boston. She's worked for Facebook and other digital platforms, and she is also working in the digital rights in Chile and in Brazil. She's been an advisor of Global Partners at Digital from the UK, Lighthouse Collective, but also for the foundation Conocimiento Abierto from Brazil. So, Carolina, the floor is yours.
Hola, muchas gracias. Pero mi video no empieza, entonces no sé si pueden poner mi video, si no van solo a escucharme. ¿Me escuchan bien?
¿Está habilitada Carolina para hablar?
Carolina, is she connected?
Hola, ¿me escuchan? ¿Me escuchan? Hola, ¿me escuchan? Hola, hola, ¿me escuchan? Hola.
Creo que
Okay, I think we'll move ahead while we solve the connection issues that we have.
podemos darle la palabra a Carolina.
Then we'll give her the floor. But in the meantime, I would like to introduce the next member of the panel, last but not least. Currently, ECLAC is working with Telefónica within an MOU framework for the implementation of online training courses and for the development of e-skills. Among these topics, we can talk about artificial intelligence, also 4.0 technologies for the productive sector. So the third member of the panel is Miguel Sanchez, who studied law in Spain, has a diploma also from the Strategic Institute in Paris, and also in cyberspace from Spain. He's worked for the Spanish Intelligence Service as a general director. He assumed executive and steering responsibilities in cyber threat and counterterrorism. In 2016, he has become the Global Security Director at Telefónica, and he's also a member of the Advising Committee for Checkpoint, which is an international fund in cybersecurity sector. He also chairs the Technical Advising Committee from Seguratecnia on private security in Spain. He also has a military award, and also all from Spain. So, Miguel Sanchez, you have the floor. Well, thank you so much, Georgina. And I want to thank also ICLAC for having invited us for Telefónica. It is a privilege to be here. And I want to thank also the Chilean authorities who are housing us here, the members of the Senate and also the Undersecretary here present. For Telefónica, it is a privilege. It is a privilege to be here present in this initiative because the topics that are being addressed is improving cybersecurity and digital security. As Jean-Marie have said, in Telefónica, we really do not speak about a cybersecurity. We talk about digital security, which is a concept that's a little bit broader but more appropriate for the topics that we are addressing and the times that we are in. Now, I will be talking about some things that I believe are important, but one of them is what citizens can do. And it's very difficult to have something very categorically expressed. I would like to talk about the recommendations expressed in the report because some of them are basic. But when people ask me if there are public organizations that receive attack, I believe that there are really two types of public organizations, individual users, those that receive attacks and those that do not know that they receive attacks. Because what I'm saying is that we are all subject to receiving these attacks. Communications and the communication of our generation and the coming generations too are important opportunities. But as all technologies have been in the development of humans, and we know that there are opportunities ahead of us. But I would like to recommend us all to have a reflection as individuals on the following line. The value of data. When we communicate, when we, from our company, when we communicate, we no longer speak on the phone. We no longer use the phone. We simply transmit data. But voice, I mean, that's almost not even charged for. It's part of the service that is provided. What's really being transferred here is data, and data are valuable. Data is valuable, and companies' data, government data, and individual data, and we simply have to be aware the value that our data holds. Now, when we connect ourselves and we download applications and we click on accepting, what we're doing is we're giving our data out for free. And from there on, we open up the door of our privacy. We open up the doors of the things that we most love. We have, there's no longer an analog life. We have a digital life, and we have that in our phone. And the connection between people, and we can talk about the conventions between Europe and America, but these connections mean that we wake up with the alarm clock from our mobile phone, and then the first thing that we do is we see who has sent us a message. We connect to the bank by using our phones. We work remotely with our phone, and it's all data that's being transferred from here to there. When we leave home, we lock the door behind us. And when we go into the digital life, that's precisely what we do not do, because that first one is the analog connection. And then we connect with all of our devices, but when we log out, we have to remember to lock doors behind. Have we actually formally logged out, or are we simply giving away our data? That's the first reflection that we can use at the user level. I think that that's actually quite an important point. It's one of the topics that we must look into, and companies should consider this when developing a digital strategy, the value of the data. Oftentimes, and all of the topics also related to this valuation that has to do with privacy, data protection, the security of this data as an important asset of the activities that people do, but of the people themselves. Is Carolina now connected? I would like to, in order to move forward, well, and when Carolina can log in, we will give her the floor. But in order not to delay the second panel, I would like to start by presenting some questions, one questions for each of the members of the panel. Georgina, I understand that Carolina is now online. Carolina, you have the floor.
We can't hear you very well.
Ok, hola, ¿me escuchan? Hola, hola, hola. Ok, perfecto. Entonces,
Okay, perfect. So if you can
en la sala, porque en el
put
video
my
no se
presentation there, because in the video you were listening to me.
Gracias a todos
Well,
y
thank you very much, and I would like to apologize for these some drawbacks. And thank you very much for the presentation. I was listening to all my colleagues, and it's a pleasure to be able to participate in these discussions. And we'll go straight into the presentation so that we do not further extend this. Sorry for my mixture of English and Portuguese. So we have this initiative, and our role is to support the initiative and to have the holistic approach for the data governance, and also to provide consultancy. That is the essential role. Data sphere is an organization of international jurisdiction, and this is also a key issue for us. The idea of data sphere is to tear down the silos and to unblock the value of data for everyone, and to come up with this value for issues related to trust that cybersecurity comes up with. And we have realize that the data are increasingly growing up, and they support and reflect most of the modern activities, and the way we govern this ecosystem of data will determine at the end the future of the society. The data are a valuable element helping the organizations to operate efficiently. At the same time, they are not only private organization, but public and public purpose organizations and institutions that are working for the sustainable development goals. For example, nowadays, we are considering the activity of such international organizations that are growing up in this space. As you are aware, the International Organization of Health Organization is creating a very large data basis on the data related to the pandemic, and there is a major effort that is being deployed in the climate-related data. And there are some non-profit organizations and an international consortium with over hundreds birth of biogenome bank or databases. And as a society, we're increasingly understanding that the data are vital. As we said a few years ago, they are basic in order to tackle this problem related to climate, to health, and also to support the technological innovation issues. An example in this perspective is that, for example, the European Union has developed the very wide data strategy with the Data Act, and the Data Governance and Management Act, and we have published a report shortly. And why am I raising this issue? Because this strategy also provides the data spaces. And this leads to another training related to the sectorial facilities for the test and the experimentation of data for many sectors, including the artificial intelligence, medicine, health, mobility, and many other issues. And within this framework, and in order to let these projects succeed and work properly, we need to link very close together and with a lot of sensitiveness, governance of data, and cybersecurity. Because if there is no link, and this is should be embedded in the design of the projects, or the result will be unstable and will deteriorate the trust of data systems. And these efforts are not only regional but global in order to tackle the problems that are affecting all of us. So I'm not only thinking of cybersecurity at the level of the company, but regionally and worldwide. For these initiatives in order to solve the problems that are collective in nature. So this increasing threat coming from the cyber attacks, as the colleagues pointed out with their statistics in Latin America, and they reduce the trust that these collective efforts are needing in order to work in the long run. For example, in health, when we think of the research of diseases, sometimes patients want to share their information, but they need to trust the data infrastructure where these data are shared, not only for the protection of the confidentiality, but also the security of the data so that these patients are not exposed. And so that in general terms, people can share data with purposes that are necessary and worthy. So the idea today was today to target at this very essential thing, that is to say, to devise the cybersecurity as a major pillar for this cybersecurity and projects both at the companies and in the international scale. And I think that many technologies are instrumental today, including the technologies for the improvement of confidence, enhancing the confidentiality, and many other technologies, including the amorphic ciphering. And thank you very much for the time allocated. Thank you, Carolina. And this contribution has been very interesting, particularly related to the role by private and public organizations and how they should include in their strategies other objectives at a macro level. For example, the compliance with the SDGs and the strategies for the climate purposes or the health related issues, with the trust or with the confidence that there is a secure infrastructure to host these data. I will like to go directly to the QA session because we do not have a lot of time, but the audience also can forward their questions and will post these questions to the panelists so that they can answer them at certain points. I would like to ask a question to Rodrigo. What can you tell us about the artificial intelligence and the security? Because this entails also a risk in terms of control and management. Well, the process of the security in terms of artificial intelligence is a very good example. And this is not only a technical problem. I mean, that the major risk of artificial intelligence is in the process of training for it and how I am controlling the knowledge that is generated and conveyed to the rest of the society as being valid. I have some questions coming up. Some of them remain unanswered, but they are good for reflection and in order to build into the future. It's possible that the artificial intelligence can create opinion based on reoccurring questions. If, for example, I pose questions targeted in order to build a response, if we can change the behavior of this answer, and which is the regulation worldwide that could govern this knowledge that is built by the artificial intelligence itself. And I think that this is a key question for the future. On the other hand, there are some reflections. For example, how can we build an opinion in order to unleash an international war for or based on um, artificial intelligence? And maybe you can share or reject this opinion, but these are questions that have not been tackled, on my opinion, from the governments and also from the training process. Finally, as a very important tool in order to build the cyber immunity, this concept that we have fostered at ECLAC, as my colleague Sanchez said before, means that the institutions and the organizations receive attacks. Some of them are not aware of. So are we being able to tap this information to come up with a resilient behavior that has some resistance? And this is the concept we have coined as of 2020 in ECLAC, and waiting for the attack and being able to protect ourselves as it happens in the biological systems, being prepared and create this immunity day by day. I think that the artificial intelligence is playing a key role in this whole process. I don't know if I am answering your question. Thank you very much, Rodrigo. I have another question for Jean-Marie. The governance of data is increasingly more important in the present time, particularly in the region, and the protection of data and cybersecurity is a stage of the economic and social development, as we have discussed before. The data in this digital economy is a very important asset, and we should secure that by guaranteeing that the data are collected and analyzed in a transparent manner, facilitated the policymaking and the solid frameworks for the governance of data, improving the operations of the public and private systems are important, and protecting the critical infrastructures and preserving the national security and guaranteeing the privacy of data. This as a collection of all three panelists. And my question from this initiative of the dialogue for regulatory framework in the framework of this partnership with the European Union and ECLAC. I'm part of the team here, which is the role of the digital alliance or partnership, not of cybersecurity, but digital security more concretely? Well, I think that here we have a very important opportunity for both Latin America and the Caribbean, and also for the European Union in terms of creating the frameworks that are not behind this technological change, but rather being guiding the technological change towards this more human-centric perspective. You mentioned, for example, the laws for the protection of laws and governance, and Carolina Rossini mentioned that the data governance and the governance of cybersecurity would not be dealt with separately. And I think that we still have things to do, because although there are major breakthroughs in cybersecurity in other regions of the world, and although there are some discussions about the protection of data in other regions of the world, as a matter of fact, there are some common bases regarding the Latin American and the Caribbean Union, Caribbean region and the European Union in terms of privacy. And when link this together with the discussions of cybersecurity and digital security, we could have a perspective that is much more comprehensive and covering also the human perspectives and those that are centered on the users. And to get out, as we mentioned in the different interventions, getting out of this technical approach and the regulatory approach, and rather promoting some practices that are aware of the value of data, as it was pointed out in the first interventions. At the same time, we should come up with the governance models with the different stakeholders, with the private and public sectors, and that finally would achieve to cover the different visions, perspectives, and to propose new frameworks. As I said before, this is a way to link the discussions about this governance and data security.
Mari, quisiera.
Thank you, Jean-Marie. I would like to ask Mr. Sanchez a question too from Telefonica. What do you think is necessary for countries to design and implement a data or digital security agenda? Well, thank you for that question, although I have to start by saying that it might be quite presumptuous on my end, because I do have a responsibility on a private company, so saying what a state or government has to do would be very presumptuous on my behalf. There are people here that are better qualified to do that, but I do have some experience, given my professional background and my personal background, that I have had these kind of responsibilities. Now in this company, similar responsibilities too. But let me try to answer that by considering some things that I believe are at least points of reference when we talk about things like this, both from the public but as well from the private point of view. For us in Telefonica, security is something simple as a concept, protecting things that are important to us. That's what security is for us. Security, 100% security really doesn't exist. I mean, it would be so expensive that you couldn't pay for it. Also, it would be quite boring. I mean, if life was 100% secure, that would be quite boring. So what we have is the possibility of securing things that are valuable to us. That's what we need to protect, things that we consider valuable for us personally as a society. Now, from the point of view of the state and also from the companies, states, well, first of all, one of the main responsibilities of any country is to provide a security framework for the citizens. Because within this framework, a relative framework, with reasonable levels of security, because it's not going to be 100%, then we can peacefully, or people can peacefully develop their lives, individual lives, economic life, progress of society, and civilization as a whole. If there is no security whatsoever, then life would be a little bit more chaotic. So in this sense, and now going into the companies, or at least a company like Telefonica, because I'm not here to tell you what other companies can or should do, here we feel co-responsible with the governments in the societies that we're operating in, knowing that we have a 400 million customers. We're a very large company, and for us, there is a certain consideration, and that is the levers through which we can provide security are really three. One is technology, second, processes, and three, people. And in our experience, in our management, in the risk management or incident management strategy, more than 80% of the incidents take place in this whole chain because there's been human failure, whether it's induced or purposely. There's also failure in processes. Processes need to be well implemented, and there are failures in the technology. Technology is perfect. We have we've all had the situation of having to make a phone call and then the telephone updating the software. So that technology does fail too. So these are the three levers that we need to push and pull in order to provide these security frameworks. And in all of them, at least what we think at Telefonica, and I have said that with the value of data, is that people are in the center of the technology. That is to say, we do not have to think about technology. We rather have to think about what people need and to put them in the center of the processes in order to guarantee security, rights, and privacy of those people that are in the center. For the state, they're called citizens. For companies, they're called customers, but these are the same people nonetheless. So with this co-responsibility, co-accountability approach, we have to provide the frameworks that both as companies or as governments need to be addressed. Thank you, Mr. Sanchez, for these points of reflection that I believe that they are very important. On the one hand, co-responsibility on the private sector, but also on the public sector, and they have to be somehow linked, but also guaranteeing a framework, not only regulatory framework, but also an institutional framework allows to move forward with the strategies that involve the different stakeholders. And then the other thing is at the company level, not only building talent, but also an organizational culture that is across the board that helps for the compliance of obligations and responsibilities in the area where their operations develop. The third and last question that I have is for Carolina. Carolina, please, if you could answer the following question. You talked about data governance, which is one important aspect of the Data Sphere initiative. But I would like to know, how is cybersecurity related to the digital security? How is it related to data governance? Yes, thank you for that question. I believe that I talked about that a little bit in my presentation, but one of the things that I believe is interesting in order to think about how to execute this is bring in the people, bring in cybersecurity teams from the company, which is normally in the IT department, jointly with the teams that are focused on data governance, the researchers of the company, or the people that are undertaking those initiatives. So within a company, or the people that are participating in regional or international projects, these people tend to work in different silos. And what I think we have to do is to create a change, a mind shift, a cultural shift that all of these things are somehow interrelated, and that we cannot just think about cybersecurity as something that is related to IT exclusively or infrastructure exclusively. This has got to be something for a larger goal, for a larger end. The company, the organization, or the project has got to establish this broader scope. It's got to be done purposely. And I believe that that is just one additional element. And what are the cybersecurity tools that are necessary for data governance that was established that provides a certain goal, whether it's a scientific research or setting up a large database on the pandemic or whatever. Because it's amazing, really, that in 2023, we still have all of these technical interoperability issues between different databases. So how does the IT infrastructure and cybersecurity, how are they thinking about addressing that? Because if a project does not have this technical interoperability, then cybersecurity of this data is going to become even more complex. So all of these challenges always make me think that there's got to be a cultural change so that these different skills, these different groups of people that are working within a company, within an institution, or within a project can talk about that from the onset. I mean, of course, we have to have a basic cybersecurity for any project, but cybersecurity will become more complex when we address it with this approach because cybersecurity can be more complex. There is the need of thinking about cybersecurity at different levels depending on the data sensitivity. So I do believe that these different sectors have got to work together in terms of skills and people development. Thank you. Well, thank you, Carolina, for this answer. Very interesting, this relationship between the technical end, everything that has to do with data interoperability and infrastructure that must be appropriate in order to develop all of the training and skills that will enable the addressing of the challenges of this digital society. So with this, we have finished the first panel. I want to thank all of the participants, Rodrigo, Jean-Marie, Miguel Sanchez, and Carolina for their intervention. And Fernando, I give you the floor. Thank you, Georgina. I want to thank the presenters too. We're going to have a brief coffee break now, and then we'll come back for the second panel.
Bueno, vamos a...
We'll resume this session now, and we'll go to the second panel that is targeted to the strategy of cybersecurity in Chile. And we have the pleasure to have this presentation by Senator Kenneth Pu, and he is senator from the region of Valparaiso. He chairs the session of defense, and then he is involved with this policy of protection of that. He was serving at the Navy, and he is vice admiral, and he is engineer and magister in this area, and with major in strategic matters. Thank you, Fernando, and I will use a presentation and basically and very briefly I would like to explain how it was this process in order to develop a strategy of cybersecurity for the long term with a political purpose, because as I have mentioned before, this is much more political than technical. Last year, and for the World Day of Communication, the Senator Ordiners launched this work that was developed with the support of ICLAC, with the Commission of Transportation and Telecommunications that was presided by her. And we were able to produce this with multiple support with Wright Roberts, who is here, Michael Hibby, from the teams of continuity, and we have the people from the whole industry. Alfuyo, I will not mention everyone because I do not have enough time. Well, and more concretely, more than over a year ago, we started with this strategy that includes different chapters. First of all, it's a political document, and therefore it should be represented by both parts of the senators and deputies, the parliament. And this is a state issue that goes beyond the political matters, and we need to work together. As you know, both we have the front and the rear part, and we have to row in both directions, and somebody has to guide the direction. That's why we have this strategy for the long run. It includes all the elements, including, for example, we can download this presentation, and I will speak about the last part of it, because this enabling factor for all the processes. This is in chapter number 6 that has been separated to create this document in both English and Spanish that can be distributed to everyone who would like to have it. So we try to find around the world a framework that would be the reference points, because why to reinvent the wheel? Because we are saying something that is already under study. We have, for example, the a model with an I index that is excellent. The index referred to the is pondering the index of cybersecurity and so on, but this gave our accord a final value. And we found the work that has been developed by the British government. They had these contests in different universities. You have the CMM model, and this is the model that we are using now as a basis. And it includes 5 dimensions, and then they have very characteristic models or elements. And this is not an index per se, it doesn't reflect the final, but we should consider each one of them separately with the subcomponents. I would like to invite you then, if you want to know the basis of our proposal and to further understand and analyze this model, because upon this we can develop the public policies, and the basis or the development of knowledge cannot exist if we don't have people who are acquainted with cybersecurity. And this is a step where we have to invest at the beginning and always, and instill these cultural change, and then we continue with all the elements, technical elements. What did we do? We first studied the level of each one of those elements. And this is the good thing of the maturity models. We go from number 1, that is scrolling, to number 5, that is running the marathon. That is a giant step and required many years, many resources. It's not a linear process. And from 1 to 3, it might be very important, and then we want to reach 5, and maybe this is just reserved for God. So understanding what each one of these measures means and the value that you are going to accord is vital to implement and to engage people. We did all the journey to know the people. Michael Goldman, who is the father of this model at the University of, we thought it would be Professor Dumbledore. But in here, we are doing this as a commission of the state with the senators from the government, the opposition, working hand in hand for this common issue. And this is the model that the OAS decided to implement to link all the nations together. And this is the second goodness. We have also the recognition of an organization that is representative that has not just done one or two measurements, first in 2016 and then in 2020. And the measurement of these public policies external, it shouldn't be at the national scale. We are exposed, therefore, to this measuring process that is done by an organization that is trustworthy, and that shows where we are. And this is the second characteristic of the public policy, that is to say, everything that can be measured can be controlled, and what is controlled works, and therefore we have a real metrics. These five mentions or pillars are the accesses or the elements through which we are going to develop our strategy. What is the OAS saying? We are measuring these conditions by 2020, as you can see sideways. There are some of them that went up and some of them that remain the same. And that is what the public policy is about. That is to say, collecting all the information and not only the final or bottom line. And this is allows to know how we're behaving in different areas where we need to do more efforts and so on. And this is the main reason that led us to choose this maturity index and not a measuring one. And that is why it's a very good experience we can contribute with. This model is updated every year. Last year, we created a new capability, the capability for research and innovation in cybersecurity terms. This shows that the countries distinct themselves if they are able to have their own responses, their own digital sovereignty, they based on their national capacity. And this is the line, red line that I'm showing you. And what are the expectations for 12 more years? We should arrive at level number 5, but it's impossible. Going beyond number 4 means that we should have the plans and budgeting for each one of these areas. And we came up with these mechanisms for planning in the long term in cascade. It starts with the 12-year outlook, and then we have the vision for 3 successive administrations, because it's not just a plan for one single administration, but a recommendation for the government that is at office today, or the candidates that are coming next, that can translate it into programs and contributing, and how will reach at the top of the hill. Some will go sideways, others by the center of this line, and will be able to reach the summit with everyone. And it has the feedback that allows to provide it with stability for the people who study the control system. This is a extremely stable process with feedback and cascading model. The basis is the budgeting act that shows how the progress is made and the effects that are obtained. We connected these political optics with something that is pragmatic, the budgeting, because without the budgeting, it's impossible to get at anything. And it's good to have the institutions, and the same thing is applicable for the private sector. We aligned it with the budgeting. We cannot assume this risk. We want to do something else. That are different objectives to pursue. I will not delve into the details, but in Chile, we're building this architecture for comprehensive cyber security, where we have the interoperability. As the previous speakers said, this is vital in order to create the link between the personal data and the operation of critical infrastructure to provide it with governance and the culture. Without the culture, it's impossible to make it work. It wouldn't have roots. And therefore, this is a very good experience for those who are making public policy. And we are the only country that is taking October as the national month for cybersecurity. If you see, all the acts are inspired in the European model. So we are, for example, the GIPR, and we have also incorporated the Convention of Budapest for the law of cyber crime, and we have $7 billion that are stolen that will not translate into prosecution, and maybe this would become a more appealing kind of crime to commit. And we are working on the framework law for cybersecurity by following the European standard. And to conclude my presentation, I should say that the national system should be reinforced with a major commitment, an alliance or partnership that includes the academia, the private sector, the military, and to take also the innovators. And out of the public policy, we're taking the example of creating these instances of dialogue through the Senate in the Commission of Cybersecurity that produced this document that can be distributed later on. We need to build this cybersecurity in the country that is involving different experts and PhD practitioners. And here we see the people who participated. This will be launched on October 2nd. And I would like to invite you to participate at the Senate because we'll be installing the National Forum for Cybersecurity, an experience that was brought from Spain. Miguel can give us further information on this, because in terms of cybersecurity, if we don't do this in a collaborative manner and including all the efforts, we will not move forward. The state cannot do it on its own. The state cannot do it on its own, or people cannot do it individually. Thank you very much. And we are ready to answer your questions now. Thank you. Congratulations for all the work that you are doing.
Vamos a pasar a
Well, let us go now into the panel. The Ambassador Ignacio Llanos, who is the Director of International Human Security, Minister of Foreign Affairs, with over 30 years of experience, former ambassador in New Zealand, and currently the Director of International Human Security in the Foreign Affairs. He's a lawyer from the Católica University in Chile, and also a PhD from Geneva, has been a researcher at the University of Hamburg too. So, Ambassador Ignacio Llanos, you have the chair to moderate this session. Good morning. After this very good presentation from Senator Hugh, we will now hear from the members of the panel regarding the cybersecurity strategy in Chile. We have with us today a group of experts, both men and women, on cybersecurity topics with experience in the public and the private sector. And each of the members of the panel will have 5 minutes in order to make their comments on their experience as to which they believe are the main challenges in cybersecurity and data protection topics from the point of view of their corresponding organizations. Then we will have some space for Q&A. First of all, we will have the participation from Mauricio Papaleo, who is the security director from the E-Government Information and Knowledge Society Agency, AGESIC, from Uruguay, where there are policies, methodologies, and best practices, and they also regulate on data information and cybersecurity at the national level. He is a computer science engineer from the University of the Republic of Montevideo, and with an specialization in security and architecture, and a master's in the management and guiding of social security systems from Spain. Mauricio, you have the floor.
Bueno, muy buenos días. Muchas gracias.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having invited us to participate here. I would like to thank the Senator, also for that wonderful presentation and the strategy that Chile is implementing. I do see in that strategy several things that I believe are critical to keep in mind when putting together a cybersecurity strategy for a country. The most important thing here is that maturity model, focusing on a maturity model where we can benchmark yourself against. And just as you have said, if you don't measure it, you cannot improve it. So having a maturity model that has been recognized, that is endorsed, and that can be monitored so that we can actually feel well positioned and then seeing how we can improve. One of the other things that you talked about, which for us has been actually critical in the last few years, is the development of capacities. We all know that this is not only a regional thing, but also something that is worldwide. Is to say, there are not enough technicians in order to address this issue worldwide, which is a critical topic, a critical concern that we have to think a lot about, that we have to dedicate time to, because developing capacities is critical. In these last 3 years, we have tried to undertake our best efforts in order to be able to set up new programs and specializations for this development to be sustainable in time, and so that in the mid and long term, we can have the technicians trained, focused on cybersecurity in the country. We wish they could all work for the state, but we know that there is a push and pull between the public and the private sector, but it's simply the rules of the game. Anyway, this is one of the aspects that I believe is critical. But also, the senator talked about something that I believe is also fundamental. And somebody else already mentioned this. We should not necessarily use complicated terminology when addressing citizens. That is to say, we need to have a cultural shift. We work a lot on the digital inclusion, on the digital society, and we work starting with children, going through young people also on cybersecurity related topics. We have to work with the children, but first of all, we need to work with the faculty. We work with the teachers, we train the teachers, we create awareness there so that they can also apply those learnings with the children and they can see daily progress. This is critical so that the new generations can be well protected. And I think that making that change of cybersecurity to digital security is actually quite a very good approach. Something else that I believe is fundamental has to do with collaboration. We have to collaborate between us. We have to provide each other support. And this has not only got to be internally. I mean, the ecosystem has got to be aligned, has got to work together, but the development of the ecosystem and the good relationships therein are critical. We have seen this and we have been building upon this year after year. It is made up of defense, cybercrimes, cybersecurity at the civil or government level, and everything has got to be well aligned. Education, the academia, the civil sector, politics, foreign affairs. That's internally, but also externally. That is to say, we have to provide each other support, and we now have to believe in solidarity. Not so long ago, I participated in an event where we talked about what could happen if we had an incident that takes place at a country level. Because not only are we not prepared, we do not have all of the capabilities in order to respond. So it would be great if we could have a common framework. And I know that this is already something that we're working on, so that we could all collaborate if we were to face an issue that was countrywide, as some countries have already experienced. And with this, I'll bring this to a closing. I am concerned, and I believe that everyone should be, there has to be a change, not only at the government level, but also at the company level and at society level. There has to be a change in the industry. We should not be here. I mean, the industry should also be here, and the industry should be thinking about this mind shift because we take the products from the industry and through them we put together our digital society. If we want to create trust, then the industry has got to develop these kind of products. I have an example here that we all go through this on a daily basis. Aviation, for example, is quite a safe industry, has developed processes, technology, and people in order to give us a safe surrounding so that when we travel, we can feel that we are safe and we're confident because the life is at stake. It was critical for that industry to develop a safe business. Otherwise, the business would not exist, would disappear. And I think that the IT industry should have a similar kind of change in order to actually drive this. If not, we're always going to be putting out fires, so as to speak. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mauricio. I want to thank you for your reflections on the Chilean national strategy. I want to highlight some of the things that he has mentioned. One of them is the scarcity of technicians, the shortage of technicians, therefore the need to develop these kind of skills. Also, he's called for us to simplify the language using the term cybersecurity, digital security. And also he has asked the industry to have a mind shift so that their products can be trusted upon. And let us now go to the second member of the panel, Daniel Alvarez from Cybersecurity in Chile. He is has specialized in technology with over 23 years of experience. He has led the processes of developing the cybersecurity policy, but also cyber defense policy. He's got a PhD in law, a master's in public policies, and is also a bachelor from Universidad de Chile. Daniel, you have the floor. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you so much. We currently, given the role that I have, given my position, I have certain privileges, and we can ask ourselves, how have we been doing the job that we have been doing? How should we carry on doing this job? And what should we start changing when it comes to our strategy? As Senator Pugh was saying, fortunately, Chile has been able to move forward in cybersecurity with a government policy. For 3 consecutive governments, we've had a policy that has been developed, and there was one that was developed recently, and it's already in the National Auditor's or Controller's Office. We hope that will be published soon. And this talks about a political consensus, a technical consensus, but also a personal consensus, in the sense that the challenges that we all face are more or less the same that we had some 5 years ago, which talks well about the policy, because it's a policy that doesn't require major changes in time, which means that the planning process behind the instrument has been well thought, but it also talks about the weaknesses that we're facing. And this privileged position that I have, given my position, and I can see much more than many of the others, is that today we're facing very complex threats. At least 2 of the last few incidents that have taken place this year are incidents that have no similar cases abroad. CERNAC and the Army. These are incidents that have not been broadly used before, and we're putting together training camps and the development of capacities also. So there are a couple of questions that come up and that we should really start wondering about. We also have quite a broad attack surface, not only due to our connectivity. Today, currently, we have multiple private and public processes, ordinary and critical, well integrated and fully digitized, whether it's for the good or for the bad, but they are digitized. And this means that some of the recourses that in the past did not present a cyber risk, it means that we do have a cyber risk now. For example, there are many Chileans or residents in the country that have info-stealer and malware set up in their computers. It is, we already have a list of about 70,000 devices. And then cybersecurity has become something that cuts across the border. I come from the previous government, so also we've seen all of the government authorities, and the consensus is actually quite high. I mean, this is no longer a technical problem. We have to include cybersecurity in multiple aspects in our daily life. So with all of these elements, I would like to present to you the view that we have for the challenges, for the implementation of the strategy, and to continue moving forward. Everything boils down to maturity. The more mature or the less, or how mature are we in order to address all of the aspects that we need to start addressing? First of all, organizationally speaking, we're moving forward in the creation of the national security, cybersecurity organization, but also data protection law. And just the mere existence will mean a change that the public and private sector deal with personal data and manages cyber risk. Just the fact that these exist, the future implementation, the technical standards, the supervision and inspections, and then the sanction procedures will imply improvements in the next 5 years. But just the fact that they exist will change the scenario. And this establishes a key challenge. How can we interconnect these two capabilities and how they will also interact with some of the other regulatory capabilities that we have in the country? Then capacities, developing skills. We've just finished a study that we hope will be published soon, where we have identified that the professional skill gap is about 28,000 a year. That's the deficit gap. And if we do nothing, then next year it'll be 55,000. And if we do something about it, we might reduce that. And this is just taking quite a conservative model, meaning that any agencies that has sensitive data should have at least one specialist. And if we expand the scope of action, then these figures just explode.
As well as capacities in technical issues in the technological capacity, because last week we made consultations in the marketplace because we're going to go into a bidding process for the elements required, and nobody responded to it. And this is concerning because maybe we do not have orders or bidders for those capabilities. We know that they do exist, but maybe the consultation process is not working. And we are proposing already this gap. As we were discussing with Senator Pug, we need to have planning at a different levels, not only at the strategic level, that is to say where the country should head to, but where the institution, public and private should head to. For example, what is happening in the area of education, we have also a pretty great development of careers, but apparently the offer is not linked to the demand from the private sector. And then this is the very good purpose that we have, but the planning of this action or the tools that are required to bridge this gap is not the appropriate one. We have a problem related to planning, and it is cross-sectional. I'm just taking education as an example, but we have the same problem in other areas, and we have the problem of budgets. As we had the opportunity to work in the fora of OAS, we're happy or we boast that we have this strategy for cybersecurity, but everybody remains silent when the issue of budgeting is raised, and most of the countries do not have the appropriate budgeting, and this is a major concern because the strategic planning depends on the budget, and this has been profoundly discussed regarding this framework law, and will go into a situation where we allocate less than $1 billion. Pesos, sorry, and the installation process will be around 12 billion or 13 billion pesos. This is not a minor investment for the country. However, we are aware that only the development of one single skill, the skill of governance for the incidents and centralized requirements, if we break down this and we take it to the sectorial arena, this will be rocketed up. And if we go to this situation that where we say that we have at least 4.6 billion, it took years to get at that amount. If we review the budgeting for the last few years, we didn't have over 300 million pesos. And if we see now the landmark, if we want to be a reference, we should take care of the institutional things that are approached by the development of skills in the different areas, the planning that is well targeted to what was mentioned in Senator Pool's presentation with a long-term perspective from 4, 12, well, 12 years, and the budgeting. If we are able to move forward steadily in these 4 areas, our or the implementation of our strategy should be successful. However, this is well a journey with many roadblocks as we propose a strategy. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel, for your presentation. And I would like to highlight the need to be aware about the risks and the threats that we're facing that are increasingly more complex, unprecedented, and that they are here to stay. And this imposes the need to be mature and quick maturity in the system, or because this issue is already getting out of the technical area. A couple of thoughts, additional thoughts. We need to develop the skills. Once again, we heard this point by Mauricio Papaleo that already mentioned that, and the importance of planning and the suitable resources, and this will translate into a maturity for the system. Now it's the Bernadita Piedrabuena will have the floor. He's the commissioner for the Commission for the Financial Markets. Bernadita joined this commission in October 2020, and she has a vast professional path in the fiscal and monetary policies for the financial markets. She has been coordinator for the capital and finances markets internationally and coordinator of the macroeconomic area of the finance ministry, manager of corporate risk of the central bank in Chile, member of the advising council in financial matters of the Senate of the Republic, director of the National Company of Petroleum, ENAP, and Cotriza, economist for the IDB, and principal or lead economist in Saler Economy consultancy firm. And she is Doctor of Economy from the University of Chile and Master of the Catholic University in Chile. Benedita, you have the floor now. Thank you, and I would like to thank ECLAC for the invitation. I would like to greet Senator Puke. I have met him in different events, and I would like to greet all the panelists around the table. What I'm going to tell you now what we are doing at the CMF in connection with cybersecurity, not just in-house, but what we're doing in order to watch over cyber security and enforcement. First of all, this commission for the financial market in Chile was born in 2020, was created at that time, and seeing the integration of what was the superintendency of banks and securities. We are a brand new institution. The idea is to watch over the stability of the financial market, the development of this market, and the integrity of this market. Those are the main mandates we received. And we need to have the financial stability to watch over the behavior of these markets. And there is no doubt that cybersecurity is cross-cutting to all three mandates. It has an effect on each one of them. It affects the financial stability, the interest of the clients, the investors, and the stability of the market. As there is no security, and all these institutions are incorporating the security. If there is no security, there is no development. We should say at the same time that the main associations of regulators around the world, including banks, securities, insurance, have incorporated in their principles the idea of cybersecurity management, and we have adopted and adapted these tenets in our regulation. The CSP started to do the regulation as of 1878 in the technological issues, and in the long run, they became
los desafíos ha sido también importante. Tenemos que actualizarnos en capacitación dentro de la CMF para poder no solo hacer la normativa, pero sino sobre todo para poder supervisar y fiscalizar que cumplan con esa normativa. Hemos capacitado, a los equipos, hemos asistido a programas, hemos creado departamentos específicos dentro de las unidades de supervisión para ver los temas de ciberseguridad de las instituciones. Para no alargarme más, eso es lo que quería contar acá. Nosotros tenemos una larga trayectoria viendo los temas de ciberseguridad en la industria de nuestro fiscalizado, particularmente bancos, que es un pilar fundamental del sistema financiero chileno y cualquier problema en los bancos se propaga a todo el resto del sistema. O sea, ahí el riesgo de estabilidad financiera es clave. Y seguimos avanzando en poder regular todos estos aspectos en todos los actores del sistema financiero, como da cuenta la normativa que hemos puesto en consulta y la que pondremos prontamente en octubre en relación a la industria fintech que tenemos que regular de acuerdo a la ley recientemente aprobada, donde discutimos muy arduamente aquí con el senador Piu ciertos aspectos de la ley. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias por exponer lo que ha hecho la Comisión para el Mercado Financiero en materia de ciberseguridad y cómo ello afecta el desempeño de su mandato, y por informarnos también sobre el desarrollo de normas en materia de ciberseguridad en el sector. Destaco también la creciente responsabilidad de los directorios en la gestión de la ciberseguridad y cómo la estructura de las instituciones está respondiendo a los desafíos en materia de ciberseguridad. Ahora ofrezco la palabra a Nicole Sabrón. Ella es Regional Strategic Sales Director de NeoSecure. Nicole es ejecutiva de alto nivel de NeoSecure y pionera en el tema de ciberseguridad en Chile y la región. Tiene más de 11 años de exitosa trayectoria focalizada siempre en tecnología, de los cuales 6 años han estado centrados en ciberseguridad. Nicole tiene la palabra.
Muchas gracias. Bueno, primero agradezco enormemente la
First of
invitación.
all, let me thank you for having invited me to participate. Just as Ignacio was saying, the company where I work is a company that was born for the data security. 23 years evangelizing and creating awareness in the market regarding the threats and the vulnerabilities and risks that exist. And I want to thank you. I want to thank the fact that today we're having this dialogue where we can actually openly talk about security-related topics. And as was mentioned in the previous panel, digital security, because it's not only talking about cybersecurity or controls, as Kenneth said, not only talking about firewalls, but it's about technology, processes, and people. And at the private and public company levels, all of the presenters have mentioned that budgets are not allocated for cybersecurity. That is to say, people cannot really see the real risk. They cannot really see what can happen with their humanity at a personal level, but also with their companies at a political and reputational level. Talking about cybersecurity and budget is not thinking that the IT computer guys will put a control just for the sake of it. No, it's thinking that all of the data, all of the information, when the tapping telephones, the cameras, all of that is traveling way beyond what we can actually understand. And understanding this at a cultural level is part of our mission. It was very well explained by Kenneth. This is all a model. And if we want to really undertake this journey towards a digital shift at a technology, industry, company, and also financial level, then we should say the data travels, the processes are undergoing, we're regulating. But those of us who are using it, we have to be aware that every action that we undertake has a repercussion. And if we do not have education regarding cybersecurity nowadays, we become a risk. And that's when we say, companies, please listen to this. Risks and threats are present today, as Daniel has also said. We've heard about some of the attacks. We know some of the commitments with people exposed. Cybersecurity is here to stay. We connect to the internet. We connected ourselves to the internet, and that was a big, big step for the country, for the world. Sure, now we're connected to the internet, and now that connection is no longer just free. It's got to be controlled. It's got to be measured. We have to be passionate with the fact of protecting our infrastructure, protecting our data, and making sure that our companies provide security for their customers. And in this particular case, and again, I want to thank you again because we are a company that has been constantly talking about cybersecurity, and we talk to our customers so that we can go into their minds, into their culture, and into their conscience. Because language has got to be used with simple terms. If we talk about technicalities, then we think, oh, but I don't really know about that. I'm not too tech savvy. No, it's actually much more basic than that. In fact, it's so basic, like Daniel was saying, when we talk about education, for example. Our children are digital natives. I'm a digital native. I set up a router to have access to internet when I was 10 years old. And we could not even think about what was going on. Now, when I was a little girl, I obviously didn't have any important data that could have been exposed. But nowadays, we're all connected. All of our devices at home, the air conditioning has Wi-Fi. Our refrigerators have artificial intelligence. We open up and close the blinders in our house through artificial intelligence devices. Do we actually know how important that information is? All of the information that it collects throughout a day. Are we actually aware of the fact that everything that is connected and that we're truly passionate about implies risks and vulnerabilities? So, thinking that currently we have a shortage of experts, it's a reality. And at a corporate level, we have a little school. We are a little school where we evangelize, and we have staff that is being trained and that develop a culture and that moves forward every single day, knowing that you need to authenticate, you need to set up passwords, and everything else in our surrounding depends, one way or another, on us. So if we go back to the children who go to school, and aside from having IT education, could have maybe one of the subjects focused on cybersecurity, that would be wonderful. Some of these technical vocational schools that have accountants or that offer other kind of programs, maybe they should also focus on cybersecurity so the people, so the children grow up and knowing that we have to build a safer world, a more secure world, knowing that, for example, mobile phones have got to have a password, have got to have access limitations so that we know, first of all, that the person is actually alive, and secondly, so that this becomes part of our culture, because it's unbelievable. Someone might steal your phone, and if you don't have a double-factor authentication, if you do not have this awareness that you have to put passwords into place, all of the information that is there could expose us, could expose more than one person. And not only will it be exposed, there could also be threats in your place of work. If you have a work, for example, regarding the infrastructure of the place you're working for, or data intelligence, all of that becomes vulnerable if there's no intrinsic awareness on our daily behaviors. And it is important that from childhood, we actually promote and evangelize this behavior and the importance of data. I'm very happy and proud that data protection has come up here, that this conversation that we're holding today is part of something that already has a mission, that has a model that we're working on, that we're moving forward step by step in a process so that we can get to people, so that people can actually embrace this culture, and that we work in culture not with a problems approach, but rather that people, every different types of people, in every different types of programs, academic programs. I mean, we're always passionate about learning things that are new, learning new things. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we, just like we're having here at this table, this conversation, if we could work on training, education, on the digital security as part of our daily activities to make it fun, to make it playful, to make it simple, so that people can actually absorb this information and can create realities under a more secure world with the controls that we learn to use, that we know that teaching our children, teaching the elderly, that using passwords is not just something that is bothersome, but that it's actually got to be something that is absolutely safe. Never taking pictures of credit cards and send them over the internet. Banks have moved forward in a lot of protection. We should not send pictures of the transfer passwords, because all the information that travels through social media is being scanned by people that are sitting there behind the scenes that we don't even know exist. So what are we doing in order to hunt this? When we use more technical language, we say that the social media are here to stay. Internet is part of our lives. We are digital natives already. Everybody is born with a mobile phone in their hand. You can see children using YouTube with smartphones. People who work for the government, for private companies, they have to understand that it is extremely important that their computer cannot simply go and connect to just any network. Vulnerability is everywhere. So we have to create this awareness and this education. It is very important. Also, providing support for the staff in developing and training cybersecurity specialists. If we're talking about the 27,000 people that we're short of in order to work and help us, we know that the budget, that the boards, that the public and private markets must work in creating a safer world, a more secure world, not just for a country, but all of Latin America, all of the region, making sure that this culture is really absorbed and that we don't actually suffer about it. It's simply an investment that will create a higher impact that will allow us to live more securely. And that's what I wanted to say. Thank you so much. No, thank you, Nicole. Again, we've heard from a member of the panel talk about the lack of awareness regarding the risks that we face in digital security related matters. Also, the need to promote education. Nicole used the word evangelize, evangelizing risks and the risks implied by these gaps in education. And lastly, the need of using a simple language that is fun and playful and that is more focused for the younger users. Now, after this first round, I have some simple questions for the members of the panel, but I would like to ask Fernando how much time we've actually got, because I understand that we should be finished by a certain hour, by a certain time. In fact, we've already exceeded that time, but maybe we could have one question for each of the members of the panel. Please, let's make it very short. But I would like to leave the floor for Senator Pugh, who will have to leave us soon. Thank you, Fernando. Once again, I want to thank the chair and I want to thank the members of the panel for the wonderful analysis. And I have taken down notes of things that you have said. And I believe that precisely this is the idea. better understanding what we can do, how we can do it in order to improve. Together with Daniel Alvarez here since 2016, we have been working together on this because we have to be committed and we have to do this passionately. So I would like to invite you to undertake this passionately. Otherwise, we're going to be absolutely isolated. This evangelization that Nicole has spoken to us about is one of the things that we need to do because it will allow us to build a better world. Daniel said that he was the keynote speaker at the 8.8, but I am the one who gives the closing remarks because we're working this week. On Thursday, on Friday, we're having 4 activities. We started with ICLAC, also the event that's taken at Universidad of Chile. Tomorrow, we're in the Congress with the Council for Transparency on the governance law, and in the afternoon with Universidad del Desarrollo. What I'm saying is that this is a topic that is present, but we really have to make it move forward. For those of you who are following us from other countries, from our friends from Mexico, and I don't want to call out your names, but I just want to say that you can see us in real time thanks to these networks and platforms. And the information gets there immediately. So what I'm saying is that this is real. It's all possible, but we need to do this not only with conviction, but also with a budget. That's my final comment. All good ideas should have budget. And what we have to do is to find it so that we can build this better future. Thank you once again. And now you can address the questions. Thank you, Mr. Senator. My first question is for Mauricio Papaleo. Well, how do you address the development of skills in cybersecurity that's being applied in Uruguay?
Well, thank you for that question. First of all, we approached this issue by doing the analysis, conducting the analysis of the demand of our country. And this study was carried out together with the whole academia and the sector of the industry. We invited them to participate and we put forward this forum in order to see how to tackle this. We did this teamwork in order to have their opinion and to see how cybersecurity could reach everyone. For a person who gets out of the high school and in a few years could be joining the market. So this is one part of it. On the part of the demand, it is very complex to work, and we do it through focus groups with the students who were leaving the high school, with the older people from 35 to 45 years of age, because we understand that this is a very good opportunity for work recycling. And the focus groups provided very good results, and these results were shared with the academia and the employers. And a very good question that was posed was, if I install a career like this, how many students I can expect? And I didn't have at that point a question to provide. And based on that, what we ended up doing was designing together with one of the universities in the country the national curriculum for cybersecurity at technical level. And this curriculum is available for all the educational organizations that want to use it. It's free. They don't have to pay anything at all, and they just have to implement it. We already have that implementator, and this is one of the largest technical institutions in the country, publicly run. And the implementation took a lot of efforts because after going through this journey, we find another problem that is related to the professors. That is to say, at every point in time, we have to raise the problems. Fortunately, we were able to solve these problems, and this is already underway. And we had a very high demand beyond the expectations that we had in the market. Anyways, they started with very small scale groups in order to do the experiences and to widen the scale of it. And I think that we'll see the result of it in the mid and long term. And we just didn't support the basis of this pyramid, including the training of these technicians, but also we went to the summit of this pyramid, that is to say, program of scholarships for professionals in cybersecurity with two universities in the country. One of them, this program was not yet implemented, and the other one was already in place, but they were losing students, and that's why we thought it was fundamental to support them. Another part that we have been working on is linking this with the educational sector. That is to say, having agreements with the international universities, and there is already a university that is doing this online with a specialization in cybersecurity. And as of 2013, we have a campaign that is called Seguro Te Conectas, that is for the awareness nationwide, and varies according to the year, the theme. For example, in 2021, it was targeted to the SMEs, because all of these companies were trying to offer their products through the internet, and we understood that we had to support this awareness campaign. In 2022, we had a security for the banking sector online. We had to support the citizenship in these matters, and we understood that that was a fundamental part of it. As I said, we are including all these topics in the educational programs of high school and elementary school, and we are doing also an educational reform in the country, and this is cross-sectional to sectors, because this is a fundamental part of it. And to conclude, I would like to say that these measures already have increased by 20% in the technicians, number of technicians that are trained today, and we were able to bridge the gap by 20%. And if this continues to be so, we hopefully should have in few years more, or to get at a balance. And we have also improvements to include, we need to include more women, females in this kind of careers. And this is something that is still something to do. And we need to include digital security in other careers, in economy, in accounting, in medicine, because these pertains to everyone today, not only technicians. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this experience in your way in terms of cybersecurity. And the second question is for Daniel Alvarez. What are the challenges for the joint creation of the National Agency for Cybersecurity and the Agency for the Protection of Personal Data that is under discussion at the Senate? Well, coordination, regulatory coordination, that is the answer. We need to establish all the schemes so that we can elicit the behavioral change, because both of them are not tackling a particular market, but they are related to a kind of behavior that is required. And this also implies that the rules for the administrative matters are modified to contextualize, put in context the behavior of each one of them. Although they are different juridical assets, the material object of regulation will remain almost the same or very similar. So we need to have this regulatory coordination. Thank you. And in the interest of time, we'll go directly to Bernadita Pedra. What is the experience that you have around the world at the developed countries, and particularly in the European Union, in connection with the coordination with the financial regulation and the authority of cybersecurity? You already mentioned something in connection with the development of standards. Well, by using the same word, Daniel, we need to have coordination. However, at the European Union, the different guidelines, DORA NIS 2, or the one for resilience is critical. And establishes a difference for the sectorial regulator is the one that is sanctioning or punishing this sector. In the case of the cyber incident, is the Agency for Cybersecurity, and they manage the event or incident. The governance is then replicated in the United Kingdom, in Canada, and the United States based on the discussions we have with the regulators there. And we believe that this is a very good governance that could be applied to Chile as well. Thank you. And the last question would be for Nicole Sabron. What do you consider to be the level of implementation and concern for cybersecurity in the companies, and what are the challenges that you find when supporting the companies to move forward better measures of cybersecurity, the challenges from the point of view of the staff with the experience and the commitment from the board?
El tiempo voy a ir al grano, como se dice. A nivel de industria.
At the industry level, we have different kinds of maturity regarding cybersecurity. I do not intend to be punctual to each one of these sectors, but in general terms, we can say that the companies today are facing an important gap. On one hand, is to understand that those who invest the most are those who have these already controlled, or and they are better protected to the exposure, and those who are taking care of the risk, the vulnerability infrastructure, and overseeing with controls are those who are at an advanced level of maturity. As Kenneth, we said, we are not at level 5 or 4, but there are some companies that do not have anything at all. That is to say, they do not have any concern, process in place, culture, or governance concerning cybersecurity. At the level of usability of the company, the data, the technology, and the people. And in here, we're facing a major challenge in a case as service manager, and we need to say that we need to live in a more secure manner. That is what we all expect. At the level now of staff, we should realize that the people who are in the market of cybersecurity are not those who will be described as the experts, because we do not have the qualified or skilled staff. They are all scattered. And we need to rather find people who are concerned about technology, are conscious about the use of it, and passionate for knowledge, and finally can embark upon this initiative and how we can render this world more secure, how we can learn quickly, and we can support our economy. The recruiting should be also based on the soft skills, that is to say that they can play different roles, that they can support, and as we said before, doing security is not just a technical issue. We have to include the legal part of it, and even the physicians need that. So the human resources should now listen to people who have an ambition to have a good job, who would like to do well and be part of this process of secure digital transformation. Thank you, Nicole. And now we would like to thank Senator Pugh and the panelists for their contributions, and ICLANC for holding this event on one of the most important challenges that we're facing today. Thank you very much.
Gracias, embajador.
Thank you, Senator. I would like to thank as well the panelists, the speakers, and the audience. Thank you very much for being with us today. And I will give the floor to the Undersecretary Claudio Araya for the closing remarks. Thank you, Fernando. So I would like to thank you as well. It is a luxury to have these kind of discussions. As I said yesterday, it's very good to be filling this position and be part of these events. And I think that we have a lot to do. Manuel, more tasks than myself, because I think that is relevant now, evident that this problem is a political one, and therefore we should have the adequate public policy in order to tackle this issue. And in this respect, maybe one of the things that we should propose ourselves is to envision what is the risk. That is to say, what happens if we do not do that? When we say that we need to lower this technical language, maybe what we have is some examples of what happens if not. We should think, for example, of the critical infrastructure. Do you remember BlackBerry? Do you remember the end of BlackBerry after they experience the technical problems? That is a problem of a country. You can be blocked because the Commission of the Financial Market also works like that. If the financial market is blocked, the country is blocked. And we have this critical infrastructure, but we have this steady transformation that depends on the digital issues, and therefore it's not very clear to put it in down-to-earth terms what happens if not. And then we have this connection with the risk for any institution, the state or private institution. As they understand the risk they run, they will be ready to invest more money. Now, the major challenge is the training of staff, and I understand the urgency of having this number of people, but we have a problem of 20 million people, not 25,000 people. We should be able, as we expect that people acquire digital skills, a part of it is related to safeguarding the personal data, understand what our data are and how we approach that. And we have a major job, how to generate this digital skill, including the variable of this protection at all levels. We have made some work with different institutions who are doing the digital alphabetization, and we are working with different institutions that are devoted to these topics. And we should continue to do that, but we should never exclude the digital security. And this is right from the training that is provided to the children in the second year of elementary school to understand what digital is, up to the elderly people who have to connect in order to can submit their candidacy to a bonus, and they need to know how to connect in a secure manner, and obviously to create from the academia all the practitioners who are skilled. And out of the 27,000 are not many that are required with a doctorate degree. We need a rather technical, qualified, skilled staff, and we can do that with the technical schools, vocational schools, to create this critical mass of professionals. But very seriously, we have to approach this problem of 20 million people who should know what is the security, cybersecurity from all points of view. I think that we have a major endeavor in front of us, and I think ICLAC for rendering this visible. It's very good to look to see each other and to see what is the north to follow.
Daniel, I have talked about this, and we know that from different sectors, from different levels in the state, we should have a common goal. And this is what the 12-year policy says. We have to maximize the impact to achieve the real goal. And for us, this is a country security objective. The country is not secure if it doesn't have cybersecurity. And that's a powerful message that we need to convey. So thank you so much, everybody, and especially the members of the panel for all of the information that they've shared. And there's still a lot to be done.
Thank